welcome to our roundtable discussion entitled The Department of Interior's Role in Restoring Our Earth and Georgia, hosted by Moms Clean Air Force Georgia, the Sierra Club Georgia chapter, and Georgia Interfaith Power and Light. I am your moderator, Dr. Tonya Calhoun, and I am a National Field Manager with Moms Clean Air Force. On March 18th, 2021, Representative Deb Haaland was confirmed as the Secretary of the Interior Department, making her the first Native American to lead an agency that manages a vast portfolio of federal land and the oil and mineral wealth that lies beneath it. As part of Earth Day's global theme of Restore Our Earth, the Georgia Table of the Climate Action Campaign Coalition seeks to heighten awareness of the Department of Interior's intent to take bold action to preserve public lands and waters and invest in clean energy and discuss its importance to residents here in Georgia. Today's virtual event will feature conversations about the role of the Department of Interior, the significance of Secretary Deb Haaland's appointment, and the importance of the Department of Interior and the National Parks Conservation Association to Georgia. To kick off this conversation, we'll be turning to our panelists to give them an opportunity to briefly talk about the passion behind their work for equity, environmental, and social justice. Then we'll open it up to the panel for a broader conversation. So for this very important conversation, we are joined by Regional Environmental Officer Joyce A. Stanley with the Department of Interior, Southeast Region, Environmental Advocate David Lamfrom with the National Parks Conservation Association, and Indigenous leader Shaina Oliver with Moms Clean Air Force, Colorado. So first I want to introduce Joyce A. Stanley. So Joyce is the Department of Interior's Regional Environmental Officer located in Atlanta, Georgia. Joyce assures compliance with National Environmental Protection Act, National Historic Preservation Act, Endangered Species Act, and a wide range of environmental matters with regional or statewide implications that fall within the purview of the Interior's authorities or programs. So Joyce has 20 years of experience of environmental review and emergency response and recovery, and a passion for environmental justice and public participation. Joyce received her bachelor's in political science from Georgia State University, her master's in public administration from Troy University, and currently a doctoral student at Walden University. Welcome, Joyce.
Thank you.
Anything you'd like to share with us about your passion for working where you work before we dig into these deep conversations?
Yes. Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited. I like my work because it gives me an opportunity to work with various agencies and organizations with the same goal. And that goal is to keep the environment protected. It's an opportunity to be creative as well. And outside the box as we make policy and decisions. In this new administration, the door is open once again to promote environmental justice, which has been placed on the shelf for the last 4 years. So I'm excited about looking forward to the Interior's new quest and looking forward to working for our new secretary, working under our new secretary. My office is under the office of the secretary, and I'm excited about that. So I kind of feel like I'm a little closer than some offices. So excited, and I'm just happy you invited me, and I'm here to assist in any way that I can. So.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Joyce, and we will be inviting you to more conversations. So like I said, you and I are going to be the best of friends.
Great, I'm glad to hear that.
Yes.
Call
so next, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, just call on me anytime. I'm standing ready to assist.
We certainly will. We certainly will. So next, I'd like to introduce David Lamfrom. So David is National Parks Conservation Association's Vice President of Regional Programs. He uses his passion and knowledge for our natural, cultural, and historical resources to inspire others to learn about and protect our national parks. David has worked for the National Parks Conservation Association for 13 years. He started from the bottom, and now we're here. In his role, David works on policy, legislation, media, building community, fundraising, DEI, and connecting voices to the administration and Congress. So David is a published author and photographer with a sincere love, probably science as well, a sincere love for conservation photography and storytelling. David formerly worked in the fields of wildlife biology and environmental science. He sits on the boards of the Center for Diversity and the Environment and Training Resources for the environmental community. Welcome, David.
See, Tonya, I just wanted to put as many large words in there as possible, just to make it difficult. I'm so sorry for that. So I guess there's just a couple things I would say. First is Happy Earth Day to everybody who is tuned in. So nice to be connected with you all. And Tonya, thank you for this opportunity. So nice to meet you, and I'm honored to be a part of this panel. The other thing I would say is, yeah, I'm first generation American, and I didn't know that there was like an opportunity to really work in advocacy, right? I knew that there was I knew that I could become a wildlife biologist. I knew I could work with animals. I wish I knew that I could make a living wage working to protect place, because place is just, it's fundamental to being human. And the things that we're trying to protect the stories of who we are and where we come from. And I think, and in some cases, those stories are hard and we have to confront them. In some cases, those stories are about healing and how we reconnect and get better. And so for me, it's really, the work is really deep, right? It connects directly to my spirit. But also it connects directly to my joy. And it connects to just all these living creatures on the earth that matter so much to me, including people who I care about so deeply, and who, right? It's not about me telling them how to connect. It's about working with folks for them to remember their connection. So I'm thinking about it like that. And I've, coming from where I came from, being able to do this work is so meaningful to me. Getting to work to protect places, like help, I've in my career been able to help create new national park units, create national monuments, to do work that when I was young, I could have never dreamed about, right? I didn't even know about, right? Let alone dream that I could be. So I feel so much privilege. And also coming from a place where our goal was really to not be seen. We believed that our safety was wrapped up in not being seen, to make the long walk to a place where my goal is to really make sure that our voices are raised and that we can show up and be seen, right?
Yeah.
And that our voices matter. To me, this has been that really long walk. So excited to talk to you all about that, about DOI. So excited about the opportunities within this new administration. But we work with all of them, because they protect so many things that matter so much. Yeah. But having Secretary Holland here is, it's a gift. I mean, a gift at a level that may be transformational, and we have to have her back too. So we can get into all that, but I don't want to take up too much space. Excited to hear from Shaina. So yeah. I'll turn the mic back over.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, David. You really touched me when you said joy. My God, this is what this work is about. So I appreciate that. So next, I'd like to introduce Shaina Oliver. I have the absolute pleasure of working with Shaina on a daily basis, but I am introducing her now. She is a field coordinator with Moms Plain Air Force, Colorado, an Indigenous mother of 4. Shaina was born in the Navajo reservation of the Four Corners of Shiprock, New Mexico. Currently residing with her husband and kids in Denver, Colorado, Shaina's field work consists of connecting air pollution impacts in environmental justice communities and health, including raising the voices of Indigenous peoples' rights to clean air, water, lands, as well as a pathway of equity in education, health and nutrition, employment, and housing. Welcome, Shaina, to the conversation.
Thank you, Tonya, for inviting me to this Earth Day Roundtable. I think this discussion is really important and couldn't come at a more important time in history. As you know, I am Shaina Oliver. I'm also a field organizer with Eco Madres with Moms Clean Air Force, as well as being an advocate for Indigenous people's rights. And like Tonya said, connecting with disproportionate communities, and really like my work really ties like my personal story and sharing that with the community and sharing those connections with air pollution. Sorry. Sharing our connections with air pollution and how those impact our health. And me being an Indigenous tribal affiliate of the Navajo Nation and my children, I really consider my story as a pivotal story of telling our stories as a way to like really move communities to out of that comfort zone of this world where we have like complacency, and by doing that, I consider to see myself and my children as descendants of the genocide of the Indian Removal Act, and known to the Diné as the Long Walk of the Navajo. And it's these types of policy violations that have run a long historic impact on the Indigenous people, our community, our health, wealth, and environmental well-being. And I really like how David said that like this is his walking path, and I agree with that. A lot of this work that we do with moms is really from the heart, and striving for our kids' health and for Indigenous communities is really fighting for the next 7 generations and their well-being in their environment. And like Moms Clean Air Force fighting for justice in every breath, it really takes it to another level after what we've seen since the shutdown of the pandemic, and how that really stirred the communities to change about what environmental racism really is and how it ties into where our communities are and how we're impacted with these industries that are a lot closer to our communities than our white counterparts communities who are well off away from refineries, highways, and Superfund sites. Here in Colorado, a lot of our Black and Brown community members are moved, what do they call it, Northeast Denver metro area, which it has a lot of these issues. It has Superfund sites. It has oil and gas refinery, and now with fracking becoming a new development, that's been a real hit for out west to push fracking, which is a lot of oil and gas extraction, and a lot of that's taking a toll on our fresh water uses. And in the west, we are seeing increased droughts, and they are seeing droughts, and they have been since like industrial movement has pushed its way into our lands through our treaties. And we've been impacted with uranium mining, coal, the plants, and as well as oil and gas has always been a pivotal reason why our lands got taken. And I really see it as a historic moment for having Deb Haaland as our head of DOI, and it couldn't come at a most important time in history where people are in dire need of leadership in combating the climate crisis, including the importance of restoring the tribal sovereignty and protecting sacred lands for our generations to come. Conservations of lands need to be with Indigenous knowledge and the most up-to-date science that we can use for our communities in order to stir our transition for all communities. Because I really feel that what happens on Indigenous lands it reflects what's going on across the nation as well. So that's why it's really important for these things to change at federal and tribal level, because what's allowed on our tribal lands is basically is what is being allowed across other communities. So that's why we need to change how leadership sees addressing conservation lands. And I really think this is an important time of history for all of us to be involved. And like David said, I didn't know we could do advocacy like this. And being minority and person of color, you usually don't go to the government offices where you steer free from most of the time. And I think that culture needs to change, and we need to know that we can step in these offices and speak and have meetings and have a civil conversation of what we can do to build back better. So thank you, Tonya.
Yay, thank you, Shaina. Thank you. I think you probably answered a bunch of questions that I was going to ask of you, but of course we'll come back to that conversation. So thank you for joining us, Shaina. So listen, I want to go back to Joyce. So Joyce, for our listening audience, individuals who may not have a great understanding, can you inform us about the role of the Department of Interior and some of the priorities that you're looking forward to in the next 4 years?
Yes. Department of Interior role is to conserve and manage the nation's natural resources and cultural heritage for the benefit and enjoyment of American people. They provide scientific information about natural resources and natural hazards to address social challenges and create opportunities for the American people. We honor the nation's trust responsibilities, a special commitment to American Indians, Alaska Natives, and affiliated island communities to help them prosper. Now, my office, located in Atlanta, Georgia, is we ensure environmental compliance. And we do that through environmental reviews, consultation, policy, and guidance. So, in environmental compliance, we have 4 big acts that we kind of manage or perform under, which is endangered species. We're concerned about the wildlife and threatened species and the critical habitat that they live in. We're also concerned about the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, which protects the birds from any killing, selling, capturing. We also work on the purview of the National Historical Preservation Act, which protects and preserves the nation's heritage, establishes federal and state, federal tribal partnerships, and it established the National Register for historical places and historical landmarks. Also, the other act is the Native American Grave Protection and Repatriation. I always have trouble saying it. Repatriation Act, which is a human rights legislation that protect cultural and biological remains of Native Americans and their ancestors. That include, artifacts and what have you. But Interior has their hands in several areas of your life. And our priorities for the next 4 years is going to be renewable energy on public lands and water. Strengthening the government-to-government relationship with sovereign nations, tribal nations. And that's going to be the cornerstone of federal Indian policy. Another priority is creating millions of families supporting union jobs. And we could talk about how they're gonna, some things about that. Working to conserve at least 30% each of land and water by the year 2030. And of course, environmental justice. We want to engage with diverse stakeholders across the country and conduct formal consultation with tribes in recognition of the United States government trust responsibilities. That's our priorities for the next 4 years. And what was the other question?
That was it. But I was going to ask you, like, you of course said a bunch of things that we should care about. Come on now. But if you can think about, you know, as we talk about restoring our earth and restoring Georgia, what would you say is the reason why everyday Americans, everyday Georgians should care about the Department of Interior? Why should we care about the work? Again, you've said plenty of things in your priorities, but for you, when you think about that, why should we be talking about this? Why should we have this conversation?
Because we have, the Department of Interior has input in all areas of American life. And that is to promote energy, security, and critical material development, increase access to outdoor activities, you know, national parks, enhance the conservation stewardship for all, you know, private and for all levels of government, private, and improve management of species and their habitats. So that encompasses all of your lifestyle. So that's why interior is very important.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Because, you know, of course, as I mentioned, you know, we hear Department of Interior, and, you know, so many people have, you know, opinions about it. So it's appreciated that you were able to break that down for us. And so we can have a better understanding of what's included, what you do, and why we should be caring about this incredible work that you do and what we're going to see in the next couple of years. Thank you so much, Joyce. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. So David, I'm going to pose the same question to you. For our listening audience, how would you describe the role of the National Parks Conservation Association?
Tonya, we got all kinds of stuff to get into, so let me just say that. And I'm excited, and Joyce, thank you for sharing and for your words, and Shaina, thank you for sharing in your words. It's really inspiring to spend some time with y'all. So the organization I work for, the National Parks Conservation Association, I've been here for 13 years. We're basically a 100-year-old organization, maybe even a little bit more than that now, that was created by some of the same people who helped create the National Park Service in the first place, who recognize that you can't protect the mission of this incredible federal agency from the inside alone, right? There needs to be external support. There needs to be partnership, right? There has to be somebody to challenge and to hold accountable, right? And to build with, right? That is when you think about your real friends and who's your real family, right? Your family doesn't only tell you you're doing great, right? Sometimes your family says, hey, you're really, maybe you're not making the right decisions here. And I think in the last administration, we were telling our family that a lot. I'll say that's the nicest way I could say that. But for me, there's something else here. There's something within the mission of the Park Service itself, which is so important to get into, which is National Park Service is a really important storyteller about the history of our nation, right? And like I said in my introduction, that is both, right? That is both, I think, inspirational, and it's also incredibly difficult. And I think as time goes on, I think more and more of us are getting to the place where we understand that if we really want to have healing and reconciliation, it's going to require profound honesty about the reality, right? The tectonic forces which have caused our nation, right? And the fault lines that many of us lie along, right? right, and that those stories not being told, those stories being told in ways that are more like strategic versus purely honest, has left so many people confused. And one of the things that happens is when people get confronted with the reality of the history of our country, they're not emotionally prepared for that because they didn't learn about it in school, right? They don't have the emotional capacity to actually hold the reality of why we are where we are, right? Because it was told in such a way so that people could feel comfortable and continue to produce and participate in the ways that are, I think, very scripted and strategic, but may not serve us in terms of the things that we really need, which is how do we hold each other? How do we build community? How do we understand and respect each other? How do we understand and respect the land? What is our relationship with the land, right? Like these are really big, right? These are societal issues, and that extends beyond public land, but also stems from it. Because when you think about what the competition always was for, it was for the land, right? And so it always comes back to the land, right? Who was there? What's the history? What happened? Where are we? What can we do about it? Right? These are big, big things. And then I see like for me, and I work with all the federal land management agencies. I have, love and respect for good people who've dedicated their lives to doing that work. And some of the work but what for me is very special about the Park Service, and I've worked really closely with the Park Service for my, majority of my career, is that as a storyteller, they get to hold these, not just management of lands, but also stories, which I think, right, and interpretation, the ability to provide interpretation of places, to talk about the history, to talk about the stories, to talk about who, to talk about what. There's so much power in that, I think, for us to be able to manage, into the future, like really telling these real stories in these places that are managed by the Department of Interior, for me, is a profound opportunity for us, like a place where we can grow, because the parks are beloved too. Like people love them, and through their love, right? It's not just stick and carrot. It's not, I'm just going to slap your hand when you say the wrong thing. It's like, I want you to understand, right? And I want you to I want you to care. I want you to be connected. And I want you to be able to see this in a way where, like, you don't just shut down emotionally. And so there's a lot that we have to do in terms of like who we are, but then recognition of these much larger systems, right? Because even if we all change, it doesn't necessarily change it immediately, because it's personal, interpersonal system. All of these systems are acting. They're acting together, right? And so, but then let's just talk about Georgia for 1 second, right? Let's talk about Georgia, which is, when I look across the landscape, you have connectivity to two of the wildest places left in the eastern United States, right? You have the ecosystem connected to the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge, which is managed by the Department of Interior. It's a place where we're currently working in partnership with the Muskogee Creek Nation to designate a traditional cultural property. It's also the largest wilderness area in the Southeast. It's also probably the most pristine wetland left in our country. It's also a place that's currently under threat of mining, titanium mining, a campaign that a whole coalition of us are working on, right? But you have these wild waters, and you don't have that almost anywhere left in our nation, right? And then you go to the other side of the state and you look at at all the national forests north of Atlanta and the connectivity of the Great Smoky Mountains, and you have really in terms of the diversity of trees and animals, just remarkable, right? The medicine in those old mountains is profound, right? You have Cumberland Island, one of the last wild Atlantic shorelines in our nation, 20 plus miles of wilderness beach, right? When you look across the state of Georgia, the lands managed by the Department of Interior are so important, and I'll just give a shout out to my coworker, Chris Watson, who worked on the expansion of Ocmulgee and the Ocmulgee Mounds, right? Talking about and the reconnection to the Muskogee Creek Nation and the opportunity to like you talk about a spectacular landscape. When you think about Ocmulgee, right? Not only are you talking about Mississippian mounds, like from a right that flow back in time 17,000 years, but you could get on that river today. You can float down that river and you can see mound systems that are currently unprotected, right? So if you want to talk about the history of our country, you could float down that river and you could trace back in time 17,000 years, right? And you're looking at everything. You're looking at today. You're looking at Civil War. You're looking at Revolutionary War. You're looking at the vast majority of our timeline, which is Native American history, that stems back, right? The timeline of our country is really tiny. If you're looking at it like a pie chart, like a little sliver of the time. All the rest of the time, there were folks here who were living life, falling in love, having families, growing food, traveling, learning, right? And again, when we can get to the point where we're telling these stories honestly and with open hearts, then we can be here with more grace. Anyway, I'm gonna shut up, Tonya, because I could go. I can get it, but
I love it. I love that you mentioned the Okefenokee. I want to know, how can Georgia communities be a part of this storytelling? How can we participate with the National Parks Conservation Association? I just, when you say, you can ride down the river, the waters, and see history, and I want to know, how can we be a part of this storytelling? What do we need to do?
the first thing, the simple, honest reality is that, of course, Georgia is already a part of that, right? And so sometimes we just have to be who we are, right? We have these seats. They have been made uncomfortable for us to take. We haven't seen ourselves in office. We haven't seen ourselves in most of the places that are the leadership places. It's time for us to take those seats. And when Shaina was talking, she was talking about environmental justice, especially around pollution. And I was just, when I was thinking when she was saying is, like, let's just be really clear. We're not saying, like, none of us are saying that we want other people to have to experience that, or that we're trying to trade with them. We're saying nobody should. We're saying nobody should. And we're not saying we won't, we're not saying we want to take power. It's not like that. It's like, stop hurting us, right? We're just people. We just want to be able to live with dignity, right? We just want dignity, right? And also we want our fair shake here. We want to be able to participate in equal ways. So the work that we do around community building is really about making sure that people have the ability to share their voices in exceptionally strategic and effective ways, right? That we're taking those voices and we're connecting them to power, right? And that we're making sure that power has to hear from community, right? To protect our national parks, to influence the Department of Interior, to support members of Congress to do the right thing. Like, and even the very best people I've ever worked with, sometimes you got to help them do the right thing. So that's what we're doing. So, we're doing a ton of work in Georgia. We're doing a lot of work around Okefenokee and around Ocmulgee. We're looking at, the protection of river systems. We're looking at connectivity on a larger scale. We're looking at wildlife crossings. So I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunities for people to connect with us, but we also need to connect with communities. And so we're doing a lot of things too. We're really trying to stand in solidarity. A unit in Atlanta is MLK. And so many things that are happening today, these are things that are happening today will be commemorated in national park units. The things that are happening today. And so we have to not only do we have to honor and know history in order to be successful in the future, we have to recognize that the current present that we're living in and the decisions we make and how we act now determines our future, right?
That's right. Thank you so much. Moms Clean Air Force, and Shaina will attest to this. We are a storytelling organization. We love to hear from our moms, our coordinators, our babies about how we're affected by clean air. And so, David, I appreciate your passion for storytelling, and I'm sure that we will be connected to you to do more storytelling. Yes, here in Georgia. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much, David. Thank you. So now, Shaina, I'm going to turn to you. Now, you talked about a lot of the work that you do, raising the voices of Indigenous people's rights. I want to first see if you wanted to give a little bit more about that work. And then I would love to hear your thoughts on the significance of Secretary Haaland's appointment as the first Native American to lead an agency like the DOI. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Shaina.
Thank you, Tonya. Just to go a little bit more on my work, I do collaborate with other organizations like the National Tribal Air Association, and it is Native-led, and it focuses on air pollution on tribal communities across the U.S. And I think this collaboration work is really something monumental, because we were able to create an Indigenous report fact sheet with Moms Clean Air Force, and to really highlight Indigenous communities and how we're impacted with air pollution and climate change, and how it impacts our culture as well as our food sovereignty. A lot of our native foods are being endangered in this way, and as well as the water sources that replenishes these native plants. And I think the work I'm really doing is really amazing, that I'm able to do this with Moms Clean Air Force, and making, collaborating with organizations, collaborating with community, and really trying to get community to make those connections with their families, and to speak up for their community, and speaking up at these public hearings like the EPA hearing that Moms Clean Air Force have really done a really good job in making sure that we get our voices heard in those spaces, as well as pushing for these petitions for to ensure that we have adequate leaders in these environmental seats like the Department of Interior. And part of that work too is pushing our stories out into networks that have a wide variety of audience to connect with. And I think by sharing your story, you're really able to connect with the issue and how it's relevant to you and the community, by sharing that the health impacts of air pollution, because Indigenous people, we have like the highest rates in like asthma, diabetes, heart disease, cancer, leukemia, mental illness, adverse birth defects, as well as premature deaths than like the general population. But our numbers are pretty similar to those that live near these industries that are toxic plants, to the refineries that we find next door to our communities. And it really goes down into the policies, and having a policy of having a Department of Interior to control over these lands that were once Indigenous and Indigenous-led and community. The really heart story of like these lands is that these lands were actually shared. There was no like true dominance of territory over one another, other than maybe family feuds of something, or disrespect of one another. That still goes into today, because we still act like that today. people are still very territorial of their communities, and that's why we need these people to be territorial for our next generations in protecting their well-being in this way, and really getting involved and getting uncomfortable in speaking your story. And I think it's really a healing moment for when you do this type of work, when you're sharing your story out in the public to make change. It's really a healing, not only for yourself, but the community is having a healing through this, through these moments where you're sharing your story to make change for a better community, so that we have cleaner air and water as well, because we're always impacted by being segregated into these communities. We always lack access to clean water, clean air, a safe environment to play on. And I'm pretty sure that, like, just like David was saying, like, the indigenous communities there have been encroached with mining. And that's been a problem for a lot of communities across the nation, is mining has had a big impact. And I think with Deb Haaland being in her seat, it really brings hope really to our indigenous communities, hope that we finally have someone that will hear our concerns on these agendas that are being pushed onto federal lands that were taken in the trust for indigenous people. And it's really that history moment that's really happening here, that we have somebody that knows the community, has made chili and really connects with community and knows what it means to self-drive and self-sustain and really hustle to get where you need to go. And I think it's really fate that where we're all at and how we come to pass on the same road that we met on, and that moms really brings people together. I mean, a lot of the indigenous leaders I met were through Moms Clean Air Force, and we were able to share and connect and revitalize our spirits in our communities, in knowing that we can make that change through conversation, through communication, and through a civil union of conversations that really tie to people and human rights, indigenous rights, and all of our rights to have a clean environment. And it really comes down to what David says, making those healing stories from the heart, and how we really need to get our communities to get on board in being involved. But we also need that in our education, because it's a lot to do for an individual to educate not only their family, but a community. And that's why we need our government's education on board, and our government leaders and our environmental leaders to really roll out this transition in our communities, because without transition, we're going to keep seeing the same problems. And I think with Deb Haaland being in the position she's at, she has that leadership to make transitions, to make and see our communities, to reimagine our communities to be something that we need for tomorrow. And I think it could be at a most timely manner that we have this moment, and how communities can really get involved through, like, their parks. I mean, that's a great way to get involved, is through the park system, and as well as joining forces like Moms Clean Air Force, or whatever local grassroots organization that you resonate with. I think powering up is really a part of the movement too, is that we're taking each other to the next to the next level that we need to be at. And it's really going to be about community and how we're able to hold each other up, and food sovereignty, access to clean air and water. I think those are the pivotal importance of interior, to have those access to keep continuing, that we have those access to those main elements: water, air, and our lands need to be restored in that way so that we can get those things. And we need to reimagine our what we think education is, reimagine what we think housing is, and reimagine what we think employment is, and also reimagining our health system and our nutrition, and how we want to be nourished, because we want to be nourished in a healthy way. Our lands need to be nourished as well. And Deb Haaland needs to, she needs that leadership to make sure that she has her support. And I think as community, we need to be her support in her role, and to advocate for the transitional change that we need with our Department of Interior in overseeing federal lands and conservation, as well as acknowledging the environmental injustice communities that are so heavily burdened by these impacts of air pollution and health. So thank you, Tonya.
Yeah, thank you, Shaina. Oh my goodness. I always love having conversation and dialogue with you. So I appreciate that. Appreciate your personal experience and how you were able to bring that to the table. So thank you, Shaina. I appreciate it. Gosh, as we wrap up our time together, Joyce, I want to ask you, is there a way for us as Georgia communities to partner with or get more involved in DOI here in Georgia, here in Atlanta?
For your input here, I just enjoyed hearing this, especially David, when you talk about interpretation. I've worked with the Park Service on the interpretation. They do an excellent job. I mean, it makes you feel like you was there, even though it could be 200 years ago. They just give you that feeling that you were living it. Yes, answer to your question is yes. Interior has several ways that you can partner with Georgia. Georgia can partner with Interior. And one way is through volunteering. You can volunteer, share your talents and skills, and in the community. And for example, you can volunteer in national parks, you can volunteer with wildlife refuge, in recreation areas. That's one of our big projects, American Outdoors. Also, you can get involved by being a partner in business through contracts and through grants. And there's 2 websites that you can go on and get all the solicitations for contracts or services that's needed. And that is, and I can send you an email, but I'm just going to tell you, it's fedbidsops.gov. Also, grants.gov have over 3,000 pages of grants, not just for Interior, but for all the agencies. Say for instance, if you're going to do something education, you can go to, get an educational grant. If you need transportation for your students, you go to DOT for that. So it's a lot there. Also, you can apply for a job through usajobs.gov. There's a lot of activity right now because of, the new administration, all these new programs is coming aboard. I don't know if you heard about the Climate Conservation Corps. It's kind of like the CCC with the Civilian Conservation Corps that was done during the Depression. So they're getting ready. It's going to be similar to that. I don't know if the age group is going to be still the same, because the other one was between 18 and 28, but I don't know if there's an age group. But those are ways that you can partner. And every bureau in the Interior have grants. You can go and look on their website, and they usually have cutoff dates and what have you. But they have some interesting programs that, grants that you can apply for. Depends on what are you trying to do. Like if you're trying to beautify a park, you would use a park service and maybe fish. I've known fish to do butterfly parks where, especially in depressed areas where, they build, planted a lot of flowers and that attracts butterflies. And so, yeah, that's a way that you can participate.
Okay. Thank you so much, Joyce. And as we're ending our time, is there anything else that you'd like to share with us?
No, I think I'm pretty much covered. Unless you have some specific questions. Like I said, we have our hands in all over everything.
Yes.
We've been around forever.
Yes.
Yeah, we can. If we don't know, if I don't know, you can always I'll find out for you. So you have my contact information. Stay in touch. Call me anytime.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Inviting me. I've enjoyed this.
Yes.
Something about your organization. So thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm going to kick it over to Mr. David. Is there anything that you want to share with our listening audience as we wrap up this time together? I feel like it's been way too short, but maybe we'll do this again.
That's how you know it's good, right? If you look up and it's been an hour, then you're like, oh, I might have been having fun, right? So I guess a couple simple thoughts to end with for me would be, first one is that, Georgia is a beautiful place in the world, right? And fall line, right? Piedmont, beautiful mountains, incredible coastline, and such a deep cultural history in so many ways, and so much struggle and so much perseverance, right? And just so much, there is so much inspiration to be gained from, right? Not from just what's beautiful and not just from the privilege, but also from just like the power of the struggle and the continuation of the struggle in that place. So for me, like that is just looking at it, it's just looking at the most beautiful thing, because it talks to me about the human spirit and about us continuing to struggle and strive for dignity, which I think is it's a fundamental human right, as is, right, clean water, clean air, all the things we've talked about today. And that's continuing. And in so many ways, Georgia's been the epicenter of that. So just want to, say to everybody there, keep hustling, keep learning, keep connecting with the land, right? These are all good things. Take care of yourself. Be gentle to yourself. It's rough business out there right now, right? In so many different ways. So just take really good care of yourself, and let's just keep doing this. Let's keep working together to make what we want.
Oh, thank you. Be gentle to yourself. Oh, yes. Thank you, David. I appreciate that. And I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Shaina. Is there anything that you'd like to quickly add as we're ending our time?
I think when I started in the beginning, when I first started doing more than petitions, because I first started out with doing just signing petition was the easiest thing to do as somebody that worked and took care of my kids, as well as taking care of the whole family as a wife. It really inspires me to see these young generations speaking up and taking on the role of community leadership. And I think we need to just make sure that we're supporting those community leaders as well as the youth. I think it's really there is support one another, support yourself. And like David said, be gentle with yourself. It is rough. Every day is rough. And find a way to laugh. Like Tonya always has that smile and such a loving nature. And that's what it really is to be community. And it's finding ways to find light in the dark. And I think when you speak from your heart, from the best you can, and try your best. And then if you find yourself at fault, just try to do better and move forward is always the key. Just keep moving forward. So thank you, Tonya, David, and Joyce for joining us. And it was really a joy to have this discussion with you guys. So justice, earth justice.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Shaina. You know, the common denominator I felt today was community and storytelling. And I think that's going to be a large part of restoring our earth and restoring Georgia. So I'm so very happy just to be in partnership with and friendship with, you know, with you, Joyce, with you, David, and of course with my Shaina. And so I just appreciate you. I know that we're going to do more work together, and you know, we're going to, as David mentioned, continue to be gentle to ourselves. So I appreciate your time with us today and look forward to more partnering with you. Take care.
Thank you. You take care too.
Take care.
During the month of April, we celebrate Earth Day through our commitment to protect the planet. Investing in infrastructure means investing in a clean energy future that includes more jobs and less pollution for a healthier future and planet. That's why we need Congress to focus on the passage of the American Jobs Plan. Act now and let your voice be heard. This Earth Day and month, show your solidarity and help protect the earth. Sign the petition and add your voice to the movement to invest in our future and build back better. Thank you for your time today.